The BRICS summit has taken place in Russia, and it was a success by any means. BRICS countries united behind BRICS pay trade in national currencies, ending the reliance on the dollar, and other BRICS-related issues like multilateralism. But what keeps them united under the BRICS umbrella is one thing when it comes to other issues of a political nature, like the Israeli regime and doing trade with it. That's another issue altogether. Some of the highlights coming up in today's program. The BRICS Summit 2024. 20,000 delegates came from 30 countries. Iran's president was also in attendance. There were major geopolitical financial shifts. BRICS significance, well, new centers of power was established. Sovereign equality was also one of the highlights that they focused on. And multilateralism is another issue of great importance for the BRICS countries. Moving on to another area that is very important. One of the focuses of this program is the Israeli factor. Many BRICS Plus actually nurtured the Israeli regime by doing trade with it. Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, has said the blessing label belongs to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and India, just some of the countries under that label. That poses a conflict of interest. The 16th BRICS Summit in Russia has ended, and it has been a great success. How could it not be when around 20,000 delegates from over 30 countries attended the three-day international forum in Kazan, including the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian?
What we are witnessing in Palestine and Lebanon today is the deepening of the foundations of war that takes place due to the overlooking of the basic rights of citizens who are just seeking their fate and the governance in their own homeland.
For all that is worth, this summit was a big deal, coming at a time of major geopolitical shifts that have been in the making for quite some time. After all, the global economy is going through drastic changes, with the center of business activity shifting towards the developing emerging markets. The multipolar model is starting a new wave of growth with the countries of the Global South, Global East, and BRICS. Although the grouping is referred to as a counterweight to the Western-led world, some members actually are divided on the issue. The interests of major players like China, India, and Brazil are becoming increasingly difficult to align into a common strategy. Brazil and India want to portray themselves as non-aligned. In contrast, Russia, China, and Iran are keen to compete with the dollar as a reserve currency to circumvent sanctions and to present a countermodel to the West, which is perceived as too dominant.
БРИКС уже играет заметную роль в глобальной экономике не только сегодняшнего, но и совершенно очевидно будет роль эта повышаться в дне завтрашнем. Страны, входящие в наше объединение, фактически являются драйверами экономического мирового роста.
It's time now for the social media post. First up, with fellow BRICS leaders at the summit in Kazan, Russia. That's the top of the move that was there. This summit is special because we welcome the new BRICS members. This forum has immense potential to make our planet better and more sustainable. Then, the BRICS summit in Kazan is significant as it marks the inclusion of new member countries, strengthening the alliance. This expansion enhances the forum's potential to drive positive change and to promote global sustainability. Next, the envy of the world, America's economy, a special report, or the world sick and tired of USA terror. BRICS unveils their plan for a new digital currency. Chinese President Xi Jinping meets with the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Xi Jinping welcomed Iran's participation in the BRICS summit for the first time as a full member, pointing out that China will strengthen cooperation with Iran despite the international situation changes. Then Vladimir Putin met with Masoud Pezeshkian. Iran will use this summit to draw the attention of the international community to the continuing crimes of the Zionist regime. On the 1st of January 2024, Iran became a fully fledged member of BRICS. The naval strength of BRICS is unassailable. And finally, Putin proposes bold economic moves at BRICS summit, like new BRICS investment platform to boost the global South and East, a separate platform for precious metals and diamonds, and BRICS grain exchange may expand into a full commodity market. Those were some of the picks for this section. Let's introduce our guest for our first segment of the Q&A. Joining us first, we have Anil Trigunayat. He is the chairman of the Confederation of Education Excellence and a former Indian ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta author. Anil Trigunayat, welcome to the program. We want to first ask you about this map that the Israeli Prime Minister presented at the UN recently. I'm sure you've seen it. It's a prop that divides West Asia into two sections. You have the blessed, and then the other is the cursed. The blessing label referring to countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and India. And one of the intentions was to eliminate a host of countries, in particular Iran. Eliminate meaning from trade by labeling them the curse. Isn't that a recipe for failure when political interests are placed above economic ones?
Well, I think that this was the idea of Netanyahu, which was not greatly appreciated by a large number of countries. That is a fact. But at the same time, this is also a fact that Iran and Israel have been involved in this mutually assured destruction for last 4 decades or so, and currently are also a virtually warlike scenario that is happening. So therefore, it was expected that he will come up with some kind of a dramatic situation in which Israel will be placed. But at the same time, most countries in the world do have ongoing relationship. India also has a strategic partnership both with Iran and Israel, and expects that the region will not be further destabilized. And that is very important. So I understand that there is a concern, maybe in Iran and elsewhere, but at the same time, this is the Israeli approach. And I don't see it has a great endorsement from a large number of countries.
All right, thank you for that. Let me bring in our next guest. We have Justin Taylor joining us. He's a U.S. advocate for international solidarity and self-determination, and he's a former Occupy Atlanta organizer. Justin Taylor, welcome. The presentation that the Israeli Prime Minister made at the UN, I'd like to ask you that question also. It's very controversial in the fact that he divides West Asia into two parts, and he names some countries as being the blessed and the others being a curse. What we're looking at over here is the fact that he is basing his political posturing, in this case for countries like Iran, when it comes to the Palestinian issue, particularly Iran has a problem with the Israeli regime, and he's separating them and calling them the cursed. Doesn't that mean that he's mixing up political aspirations with economic ones?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for having me on today. What I wanted to say is from the beginning, it has been a genocidal campaign, and it must be condemned in the strongest of terms. That for them to use this kind of us versus them ideology, it is not leaning towards cooperation. But what they're carrying out right now in not only Gaza, but the West Bank, with weekly settler marches that chant racist things and are escorted by the IDF and harass people, and then in southern Beirut as well, where they're attacking neighborhoods and flattening apartment buildings. In the strongest of terms, this must be condemned as a genocidal campaign with the end goal of the destruction of the Palestinian people, with over 900 families that have been completely erased from the civil registry. To talk of this is our land, this is your land, Benjamin Netanyahu's home is on the land that once belonged to someone named Tawfiq Cannon, who was one of the first Palestinian doctors. And what's so recent and what feels similar to the United States is the way that the indigenous were stripped of their land here beginning in the 1820s, beginning much further before that, but in terms of direct policy in the same way in the 1820s. And when they were stripped of their land, they had their names removed. And what we must remember is, since this genocide has been more recent, with the Nakba being 75 years ago, to recall and say the names of the people who were the original inhabitants.
It's time now for the Infonews section of the program. First up, we're going to take a look at An event that's coming up soon, the U.S. elections. We figured we'd pick this particular one. It was interesting because it said, want to know who will win the U.S. election? Take a look at the stock market. It went on to say that since 1928, the S&P 500, which is the stock market in the U.S., it tracks the performance of the 500 of the largest firms in the U.S., has pointed to the winner in 20 out of 24 elections. That's not a bad batting average. With less than 2 weeks until the election, well, in this case, a week as of the recording of this program, the S&P 500 is up a healthy 11.8% since early August. If U.S. stocks don't take a tumble, the historical trend points to Harris. But then again, you have to take a look at that with your own introspective. Next up, the IMF and Iran, in terms of how Iran's economy is doing, it has revised its 2024 economic growth forecast for Iran to grow by 3.7% this year, up from 3.3% that it had previously. It also went on to say that inflation will decline to 31.7% for the year 2024 from 40.7% last year. Now keep in mind, that's for the year 2024, which is the Iranian calendar year. We still have a few more additional months to go. This entry really caught our attention in terms of fossil fuel and investments in it, where it said global banks have spent 6.9, and I have to take a look at that figure again, is $1 trillion on fossil fuels since the year 2016. Imagine that, U.S. banks accounting for 30% of the $705 billion from private global banks, which have been spent on fossil fuel financing for the year 2023. Now that total includes $705 billion in fossil fuel financing that happened last year when the global temperature increases spiked above 1.5 degrees centigrade for the first time ever. I have two words for that. Paris Agreement. What happened? And finally, another U.S.-related election piece of news, Bill Gates backing Harris. And the title was interesting, Dark Money, Darker Motives. Why is Bill Gates backing Kamala Harris using shady super PAC money? Well, the implications of Microsoft founder Bill Gates' quiet role in influencing the 2024 presidential election in the U.S. It was the intro to this, where it said that the tech billionaire has given Kamala Harris's campaign a $15 million boost using dark money, super PAC, and the name of that is Future Forward. Those are the items we picked for our Info News section. Please, if you have any related news, economically speaking, wherever you are in whatever part of the world, do send them to us. We're very interested in that. Contact information is coming up. This is the in-depth section of the program. The 13 BRICS Summit was a success in many different ways, from the integration of financial systems to the unveiling of BRICS Pay. But there lies a painful fact when it comes to the political bonds that exist between these countries and an arch foe, namely the Israeli regime. To what extent is this relationship, and with how many countries is there? Well, we're going to take a look at that. Let's take a look at 4 of these countries. In this particular case, the presentation made by the Israeli regime's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. You can see those countries that he calls the blessing are India, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, just to name a few. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu went on further and called the countries that you see behind me the curse. And he had Iran included in there, along with Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Well, Israel's energy resources is our focus in this particular graph that you see here. Basically, what you're saying is that Russia has become Israel's #1 coal supplier that you see over there. That's followed by South Africa. Now that Colombia and Turkey have declared a boycott against Israel and those products. Brazil providing 9% of Israel's oil is also another factor. South Africa and Brazil have said that they will not impose coal and oil sanctions on Israel. Well, Israel imports a small but regular amount of oil from Egypt via what you see there, the Sidi Carrier Terminal up there. And basically that is near Alexandria and the terminus of what's called the Sumid Pipeline. The Sumid Pipeline is one that goes all the way through from that Ain Shukna terminal up to the Sidi Carrier Terminal. Basically what happens is that oil from BRICS members, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, as well as Iraq also feeds into this pipeline. Let's move on to military deals. Well, vocal critics of the genocide Well, they have been providing the regime with military assets and means. For example, Brazil and Elbit Systems Cooperation, they at this point have paused their cooperation with it, but they were working with that Tel Aviv-based systems. India supplies vital military equipment for the use in the Gaza Strip, the occupied West Bank, and now Lebanon, including Adani's Elbit's deadly medium-altitude, long-endurance drones. And then finally, you have India and Ethiopia who are contributing military personnel in the form of draftees or mercenaries. Now, the two main parts of Israel's main port at Haifa were privatized in recent years. By whom? Well, the Shanghai International Port Group. Why is that important? Well, because it involves China. And you have also the India-based Adani Group facilitating more efficient supply of weapons and ammo to the IOF. And the Chinese-Israeli trade, that's another aspect we want to take a look at. $20 billion is what that total is when it comes to trade with the Israeli regime. India coming in at $5 billion and Brazil at $1.92 billion. Now, these types of trade volumes goes flat against the type of political posturing that is done by these countries. So that's why we are including that. And we are going to now move on to the Persian Gulf Arab nation of the UAE. If we could take a look at the next graph. And you can see, because of the Abraham Accords and the UAE's normalization with the Israeli regime, look at the way that the sales figures have increased from the year 2020, which stood at $115 million, and up to 2022, at this point, $1.89 billion. So you have countries that are the members at BRICS, where they're aligned, especially in terms of their trade aspirations amongst themselves and the world. But then you have how they go and diverge when it comes to the Israeli regime. Let's bring in our guests and see what they think. Our guest rejoining us here is Anil Trigunayat, chairman of the Confederation of Education Excellence and a former Indian ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta, Arthur. Anil, welcome back to the program. When we want to take a look at this controversial fact of how you have BRICS members who are aligned when it comes to obviously their trade and other BRICS-related facts, they are not aligned when it comes to the Israeli regime, and they do business with it. Some are calling that a case of double standards. Would you call it that?
Well, the world is full of double standards in a way, but at the same time, geoeconomics dictates that the interdependency and the globally is a reality. It happens everywhere in every country. As far as we are concerned, as we have said, that our policy is that we support the Palestinian cause. We have great relationship with Iran, but at the same time, we have a strategic partnership with Israel. Likewise, the countries in the Middle East do have their businesses, their relationships, whether it is security or other domain, with Israel. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. What we say is that the most important issue, because of which stability is unlikely to be achieved, is the problem or the issue of Palestine state, which has been under the carpet for more than 7 decades. That needs to be addressed. So the countries continue to work. We have every country looks after its own national interest. That is the supreme duty of any country's foreign policy. So maybe from Iranian perspective, it might look to you that having relationship with another country by India or by Saudi Arabia or others is different. But each country has to pursue its own national interest also.
All right, thank you for that. Let's find out what our next guest thinks. Justin Taylor rejoins us, U.S. Advocate for International Solidarity and Self-Determination. Justin Taylor, welcome back. We just had our guests say that, countries can follow their path when it comes to whom they want to deal with, even though they are a BRICS member. But this goes against, obviously, the notion of a genocide that's taking place and what they say, for example, in public, but yet they are doing trade with the Israeli regime. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that they are right, or is this a case of double standards when it comes to it?
Yes, it is absolutely a case of double standards, and they are 100% correct to call out the genocidal campaign of Israel upon the Palestinian people, because it's clear that they want their land, they want their resources, they want to build a canal, they want to issue gas and oil contracts. So they're 100% correct to call out the IDF on the genocidal campaign. But at the same time, some of those BRICS countries are some of the largest arms traders with Israel. Specifically, India, I believe in last year's numbers was the highest arms dealer from Israel, and Brazil is closely behind them.
The BRICS member countries are in possession of some of the world's valuable resources like oil and gas and commodities like wheat. So much so, the Russian president proposed a BRICS grain exchange at the summit. A number of BRICS countries are among the world's largest producers of grains, vegetables, and oilseeds. The BRICS grain exchange would facilitate the formation of fair and predictable price indicators for products and raw materials, taking into account their special role in ensuring food security. The project would help protect national markets from negative outside interference, speculation, and attempts to cause an artificial deficit of goods.
If you look at the expanded BRICS, it actually now includes many countries which are notionally allies of the West. And that again is a very important message to say that the West may be losing its allies because of its actions. And if it doesn't take the global South, as represented by the BRICS seriously, it is going to have less and less of the ability to manage or make rules or shape the rules of the world.
The bloc's BRICS pay system was also unveiled at the Collective's Business Forum in Moscow. The BRICS bloc has sought increased financial autonomy. Specifically, they have sought increased de-dollarization in an effort to lessen international reliance on Western currencies. This allows increased local currency trade and challenges U.S. dollar dominance. As such, this summit convened to offer a new vision of multilateralism, an alliance of multiple countries pursuing a common goal. Multilateralism is based on the principles of inclusivity, equality, and cooperation, not included in the West doctrine.
Hello, and welcome to the Quick Take section. I'm Kailash Purnamati. When it comes to the 13th BRICS Summit, the scale of the event was quite large, given the number of countries that were in attendance. To get a real gauge about the outcomes of the summit, it is worth looking at the final communique. New centers of power, the group reaffirmed its commitment to promoting a multipolar world order, where all nations have an equal say in global affairs. This is reflected in the declaration's call for greater representation of emerging and developing countries in international institutions. The group emphasized that all countries have the right to pursue their own development path and make decisions about their internal affairs without interference from other states. The communique said, "We reaffirm our commitment to the BRICS spirit of mutual respect and understanding, sovereign equality, solidarity, democracy, openness, inclusiveness, collaboration, and consensus." The declaration condemns all sanctions and unilateral coercive measures as incompatible with international law, highlighting their far-reaching implications for human rights. Some of these coercive measures included the disruptive effects of unlawful, unilateral, illegal sanctions on the world economy, international trade, and the achievement of sustainable development goals. Economic sanctions disproportionately affect the poor and vulnerable in targeted countries. Non-discriminatory trade in local currencies would actually help respective economies. The communique said BRICS welcomes the use of local currencies in financial transactions between BRICS countries and their trading partners. It continues calling for the establishment of a BRICS cross-border payments initiative, supporting the BRICS New Development Bank's financing projects in local currencies and its growth into a premier multilateral development institution. That does it for this Quick Tech section. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to get in touch with us. Contact info on your screens now. I'm Kailash Purnamati, and I'll see you next week.
BRICS will prosper because it has surpassed the G7 in GDP growth, and the member nations are in possession of many of the world's natural resources, like oil. This gives them political clout as well. Now, even though they are united, it doesn't mean that they share the same political views or ideals as well. As we have shown you, doing trade with the Israeli regime is okay for some members, and well, that's just a shame, because that actually contributes to the genocide, which is still continuing to this day. That does it for this edition of the program. Hope you liked it. This was a somewhat a different approach that we took to the BRICS summit that was held in Russia in terms of the alignment of some of these countries with Israel in terms of doing trade. Therefore, we would really appreciate it if you send us some comments or feedback. Contact information is behind me. From me, Kava Takwe, and the entire team here at Economic Divide, it's goodbye until the next